Hi, this video is supposed to help you think a little bit more about scatterplots and especially the material in Module 13. When you make a scatterplot, you're trying to determine if there's a relationship between two variables. So in this case, we're looking at the driver's age and the sign legibility and distance and in feet. This is in Module 13 and it's on page 75 if you're interested in looking at it inside the book. So what we see in this particular scatterplot is that there does appear to be a relationship between driver's age and sign legibility. The relationship is negative, and it is fairly strong. We see down here that the correlation coefficient is negative 0.793, which is, fairly strong, although not as strong as it could be. And then it's also linear in shape and in form. And then we see that it really doesn't have many outliers. Maybe that one up there is an outlier. You might argue about that one, or maybe something down here. But overall, it's pretty good, pretty strong relationship. This means, or it seems to suggest, that as you get older as a driver, the distance that you can see and see a sign decreases. And that younger drivers, of course, can see a sign further away. Now, when you go a little further here and say, how good is the line of best fit? And that's what this red line represents here, that least squares regression line or line of best fit. Well, there's a couple ways to look at that. One of them is to find the R squared value. And you'll notice they've done that little calculation right here. They just took the correlation coefficient and squared it, and they got this number. So this number now represents the percentage of the variation in sign legibility that is explained by the least squares regression line. Another way of talking about that is that we're saying that as you get older, about 63% of the effect in reduced distance, reduced seeing, is due to your age. Now, that means there's another 37% left over, and that's caused by something else. Maybe it's about the weather, or maybe it's about your genetics, or maybe it's about the clarity of your windshield even as you're driving, right? All kinds of things that could be affecting your ability to see a sign at distance and how many feet it is. But what we're seeing here is that age is a pretty big factor, or at least appears to be a pretty big factor in how far you can see a sign. So, and again, that's 63%, which is, well over half. In fact, it's almost 2/3 of the variation is explained by the least squares regression line, which means that about almost 2/3 of the change that we're seeing in sign legibility is explained by your age. That is really what R squared does in a nutshell. The other thing that we could estimate here, although we don't have the number for this one, we could estimate the standard error. And that means we're going to look kind of for the average distance, approximately the average distance that dots are away from the least squares regression line. In this case, we kind of draw lines like you see how I'm doing like this. That's kind of the average distance line, I would say, on one side, and then we've got the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to say that comes out to be about, hard to really estimate this clearly, but maybe that's 20, 10, 15, 10 to 20, 10 to 20 feet, that would be, that dots are on average away from the least squares regression line. That is to say that each data point has about 10 to 20, on average, 10 to 20 feet of error associated with it and in the least squares regression line. I hope that helps a little bit, and feel free to ask for other videos or to ask clarifying questions about this one. Thanks so much.